What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now we all know that petrol heads prefer cars with naturally aspirated engines, yet the number of cars equipped with such an engine decreases rapidly. And of course this is mainly due to various legislations. Now as a result of this, cars with older naturally aspirated engines are holding their value quite well. They are labeled to be the last of their kind. And that brings me to the Cayman market. Last week I received a bunch of messages from you asking what the hell is going on over there. You see, up till 2016 you could get a Cayman 981 and this would come with a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder. Yet, the successor of the 981, the 718, lost the praised 6-cylinder engine and came with a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. Now personally, I never drove one of the new Caymans, but if you read up on the reviews, you will find that they are all the same. They go something like this. It's the best handling car in its class, but the engine doesn't deliver the same sound and feeling as the 6-cylinder in the old 981 did. And this criticism is also reflected in the values. In this video over here I showed you that 981 values were exceptionally strong when compared to 718 values, and that this goes especially for the GTS. Yet many things changed since I made this video, and these things could have a drastic effect on the market. Let's first talk about the elephant in the room, the new GTS. Porsche did what everyone hoped but none actually believed. They introduced a new 718 GTS with a 6-cylinder engine. And this of course means that all of a sudden the 981 is a lot less special. It is no longer the last of its kind. And this raises the question, did 981 values plummet? Now second, due to the pandemic, sports and supercar values increased. And this increase could potentially offset any effect which the 4-liter GTS might have had on 981 prices. Now as you probably expected, in this video we will answer all of those questions and we will take a data-driven approach. Yet, before we start to investigate all of those price differences, let me first introduce you to today's Cayman market. This graph over here has the model year on the horizontal axis and the price in US dollar on the vertical axis. Each car is displayed by a bubble and the graph is categorized by the Cayman generation and type. Now first, you can see that the 981 market is a lot bigger as there are only 66 cars for sale versus 292 718s. The 718s are also around $16,000 more expensive, but this makes sense. They are a lot newer after all. Now then, let me point out some peculiar things here. If we start with the 718 Cayman market, then we can see that the value development for the S and the base model is quite stable. Yet, for the GTS this is a bit different. Cars from model year 2019 have a premium of $10,000 over the S, while this is only $8,000 for cars from model year 2018. Moreover, a GTS from model year 2018 is $14,000 cheaper than one from model year 2019. And if we look then a bit to the left, then we can see that this means that they have now the same price as a 981 GTS, which even have a slightly higher mileage. So this already shows how much the market actually values a 981 GTS. If we look then at the 981S and the base models, then we can see that they are priced a bit lower than the 718. However, it is difficult to compare them as the number of data points is quite small and the mileage differs a lot between the model years. We will therefore switch to a mileage perspective. You can see now that we have the mileage on the horizontal axis and the price still on the vertical axis. And we're by the way only looking at the used cars over here. And look at that. We can see now that when you correct for the mileage, the 981S is in the same price range as the 718 base model and that the 981 base model is priced lower than the 718 base model. But there is some overlap. Hence, 981 prices are indeed very strong. You need to remember that there is a large age difference between the cars here. However, it is clearly the 981 GTS which is valued the most by the market, as those prices are on par with the 718 GTS. And this is different for the 981S and base models. We just saw that these are priced lower than their 718 counterparts. So, based on the market snapshot which I just showed you, there doesn't seem to be any impact from the 4-liter GTS on the 981 GTS. After all, we just saw that 981 GTS prices are in relative terms the highest of the 981 market. But to be sure, we of course need to compare the 981 prices from before the introduction of the 4-liter GTS to the ones after the introduction of the 4-liter GTS. So let's do that now. But before we continue, if you like this data-driven way of analyzing cars, please support the channel by smashing that like button. Thank you. Alright, let's continue with the price comparison, and we start with the complete 981 market and then drill down to the individual models. The price distribution over here shows now in orange the price in February 2020 and in blue today's prices. And this graph gives a very clear message. The blue distribution lays on the right hand side of the orange one, and this means that prices went up. Moreover, they went up with $5,000, and this increase is statistically confirmed. And to put it simple, this means that it is unlikely to be the result of chance. We can then also see that both the bottom end of the market and the top end of the market move up. Now what makes this even more impressive is that when we look at the mileage distribution, also the mileages increased. They went up with 5,000 miles, and this means that on average you need to pay more for a 981 and also get a car with a higher mileage in return. But now then, are there any differences between the model types? That is what we will figure out now, so let's dig a bit deeper into this data. The graph over here displays the mileage to price relationship for the base, the S and the GTS market. You can also see then that the graphs are split by market date. In blue we have again today's market, and in orange the market of February 2020. Yet, before we look into the price changes, you need to know that supply decreased by 50% for all the models. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now then, let's look at the price changes, and we start at the left hand side with the base model. In this market, prices went up with $4.5 thousand, or an astonishing 10%. Yet, you can see that especially the bottom of the market increased. For cars up to 30,000 miles, prices didn't move outside of the price range. They just shifted to the top end of that range. For the higher mileage cars, for which we only have a few observations, it seems to be so that a larger shift took place. You can clearly see that the cars at 60,000 miles are priced significantly higher than the ones 1 year ago. And as a result of this, the depreciation per 1,000 miles line flattened a bit and sits now at $135 per 1,000 miles driven, or 0.3%. And this, by the way, is an extremely good score. It might even be one of the lowest on the channel. Now if we move then to the S model in the middle, then we can see that also here the blue line lays above the orange one and that prices went up. They increased with $5,000 or 10%. So this is very similar to the increase which we saw in the base market. Yet over here, prices really moved outside of the previous price range. Now, just as in the base market, the depreciation per 1,000 miles is extremely low with $192 per 1,000 miles driven, or also 0.3%. And with those numbers, let's move on to the GTS. Things are a bit different over there. Also here, the blue line lays above the orange one, but you can see that the difference is not so large as for the other models. Prices only went up with $2.4 thousand or 5.8%. And out of all of the models, this is the only one where the price increase is on the edge of being statistically confirmed. Hence, the increase which you see here might be the result of chance, or for example a change in market composition. The GTS is also the most sensitive to mileage, as it loses $334 or 0.4% per 1,000 miles driven. But also this is still a very good score. So, what do we make of all of these price changes? Well, it is of course impossible to prove that the price increase in the GTS market is lower than in the other markets due to the introduction of the 4-liter GTS. Yet, based on the numbers which I just presented to you, we can conclude that the dynamics in the GTS market are different and that this might be caused by the introduction of the 4-liter GTS. However, we also need to keep in mind where the 981 GTS values were coming from. Last year, the premium for a GTS was already quite high, and this might mean that the value increase during last year is dampened. We therefore need to gather a bit more information to find out how high or low the price increase in the GTS market actually is. And that we will do by comparing it to the price increase in the 718 market and also to some other sports and supercars. Let's start by figuring out the price changes in the 718 market with the following graph. We are looking again at the mileage to price relationship for two market dates. Note though that the date of last year is slightly different than for the 981 market. Now then, if we look at the data, we can see that for the S and the base market, the orange line clearly lays above the blue line. And this means that prices went up. For the base market, they increased with $6,000 or 11.5%, and for the S market this is $2.5 thousand or 3.9%. Now if we look at the GTS market, then we can see that the price increase is not that large. it's only $1,800 or 2.2%, and this increase is not statistically confirmed. Now, to organize things a bit, I put all of the numbers which we just saw into a table so we can compare the price increase in the 718 market to the one in the 98 market. Let's have a look. You can see now that the base models went up with 11% in both markets. And when it comes to the S models, both markets show an increase, but it is much more severe for the 981 and for the 718 market. Yet, the most interesting thing over here is of course that the GTSs increased the least in both markets. So something is going on here. Yet, before we can conclude on this, we still need one more data point. The general price increase in the sports and supercar market. And we can look at that with the following graph. Now I know this is very small, but I will make it bigger soon. We have here on the horizontal axis some cars which are analyzed on this channel, and on the vertical axis the relative price change. Now the graph over here does not show a perfect comparison, as the price changes are based on slightly different dates. Yet we can still use it to get a rough estimate as to how various cars went up or down in price. Now to make this more readable, let me only include the price changes which are equal to or higher than the smallest increase for the Cayman. That's better. If we then identify the Caymans here, then we can see that compared to other cars, the two base models and the 981S increased quite a lot. The 981 GTS sits somewhere in the middle and the 718 GTS is more at the lower part. Hence, even though that the price increase for the 718 GTS is low compared to other cars, it's not extremely bad compared to the rest of the market. And with that, let's wrap up and conclude. So, did 981 GTS prices plummet after the introduction of the 4-liter GTS? Certainly not. The price increase in the 981 GTS market is in line with the price increase in other car markets. Yet, it is remarkable that this increase is the least out of all of the 981 models. So the 4-liter GTS might have played a role there, but it is of course very difficult to prove this quantitatively. Now another reason for the relatively small price increase can of course be that 1 year ago the GTSs were already going for such a large premium that there was simply no room anymore for further price increases. Nevertheless, results show that irrespective of what happened, prices followed the market trend to some extent. Therefore, I also expect that this will happen in the future. Now when it comes to the 718, I was a bit surprised to find that prices went up so much. Sure, we all know that sports and supercars are in an upward trend, but I mean, come on, a 718, the car is not yet bottomed out and it doesn't rank too high on the desirability scale. At least that is what I thought, but I guess I was wrong there. And with that we arrive at the end of this video. Now if you like this way of analyzing car markets but would have liked to see it for a different car, please comment the name of that car down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you will be actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.